I never thought dying would be the best thing that ever happened to me. But 3 months ago, I died alone in a hospital bed at 45 years old, my hand reaching out for a husband who'd abandoned me 20 years earlier. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in that sterile room anymore. I was 25, standing in my tiny apartment bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test. And this time, I knew exactly what would happen if I told Daniel Zhang about this baby. This time, I had the power to rewrite everything. My name is Maya Chan, and I'm about to tell you how I took the worst moment of my life and turned it into my greatest victory. Because knowing your husband will abandon you for his first love the moment you announce your pregnancy? That's not a curse. That's ammunition. The pregnancy test trembled in my hand as memories from 2 lifetimes flooded my mind. In my previous life, I told Daniel about this baby with tears of joy streaming down my face. He'd held me and promised we'd figure it out together. 3 days later, he was gone. Just a note on the kitchen counter. I can't do this. I'm sorry. 20 years of silence followed. 20 years of working 3 jobs to raise our daughter Emma alone. 20 years of wondering what I'd done wrong to make him choose Lily Wong over his own family. But this time I wasn't that naive girl anymore. This time I had knowledge, dangerous, powerful knowledge about the future. I knew which stocks would explode. I knew which neighborhoods would gentrify. I knew which business trends would dominate the next 2 decades. Most importantly, I knew that Daniel Zhang wasn't worth the tears I'd cried over him. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I was young again, unmarried again, standing at the exact crossroads where everything had gone wrong. The date was March 15, 2003. In my original timeline, this was the day I told Daniel about the pregnancy. In exactly 72 hours, he would leave me for Seattle and Lily Wong, the college sweetheart he'd never really gotten over. But I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. Not this time. I shoved the pregnancy test into my pocket and walked into the kitchen where Daniel was making coffee, humming that same off-key tune he'd hummed 23 years ago. He looked so young, so innocent, completely unaware that he was about to make the worst decision of his life. In my previous timeline, I'd begged him to stay. I'd told him about Emma, hoping fatherhood would change his mind. It hadn't. He'd signed away his parental rights and disappeared into his new life. "Morning," Daniel said, pouring me a cup. "Want some?" In my past life I'd refused, saying I was cutting back on caffeine. That had led to questions, which led to me showing him the test, which led to 3 days of lies before he vanished. This time I took the cup. "Thanks," I said, studying him carefully. He looked excited, energized, like someone with a secret. I knew what that secret was. Lily had called him yesterday with a job opportunity in Seattle. She'd asked him to come with her, to give their relationship another chance. And Daniel, my husband of barely 2 years, was already mentally packing his bags. "You seem happy," I said casually. "Just a good morning," he replied, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. He was already lying to me, already choosing her. "Daniel," I said, putting down my coffee cup, "we need to talk about us." His face went pale. "What about us?" "I've been thinking a lot about our marriage lately, about whether we rushed into this. We barely knew each other when we got engaged, and now I'm wondering if we made a mistake." The relief that flooded his expression should have hurt. In my previous life it would have destroyed me. But now, with 20 years of perspective, I saw it for what it was, proof that I was making the right decision. "You think we made a mistake?" he asked carefully. "I think we got caught up in the idea of being married without really thinking about whether we were right for each other. And lately I've been feeling like we're more like roommates than spouses." "I've felt that too," Daniel admitted. And I watched him scramble to turn my words into his exit strategy. "Maya, I care about you, but I'm not sure I'm in love with you anymore. Actually, I'm not sure I ever really was." Perfect. He was giving me exactly what I needed. "So what do we do?" I asked. "Maybe we should separate. Take some time to figure out what we really want." "I think that's a good idea. And to be clear, during this separation, if there's someone else you want to see, you should feel free to do that." Daniel's eyes widened. He hadn't expected this to be so easy. "Is there someone else you want to see?" "Not currently. But I think we should both have that freedom. No judgment, no obligations." "When should I move out?" "Whenever you're ready. This weekend if you want." I watched him try to hide his eagerness behind a mask of reluctance. Maybe that's for the best. I could stay with Mike for a while. Mike was his college roommate. In my previous life, Daniel had claimed he was staying with Mike while he actually moved in with Lily. I wondered if he'd use the same lie this time. Sounds good, I said. And Daniel, I don't hate you. I think we both deserve to be with people who make us happy. He squeezed my hand. You're being really mature about this. Mature. Right. If only he knew I was 20 years older than him in experience, carrying memories of a future where he abandoned his pregnant wife and never looked back. That night, I listened to him pack. He was taking more than he'd need for a temporary stay, and we both knew it. By morning, he was gone, leaving nothing but a note. Thanks for understanding. We'll figure out the details soon. I read the note once, then tossed it in the trash. I had more important things to focus on than Daniel's cowardice. I had a baby to prepare for, a career to build, and a future to secure. The first thing I did was open a separate bank account and transfer my half of our joint savings. Daniel would notice eventually, but by then it wouldn't matter. Next, I scheduled a meeting with Sharon Peters, the senior partner at my accounting firm. I want to talk about advancing to senior accountant within a year, I told Sharon bluntly. What do I need to do? Sharon looked surprised. In my previous life, I'd been content with my junior role, too focused on impending motherhood to be ambitious. But that lack of ambition had cost me decades of financial struggle. That's ambitious, Sharon said. But I like ambition. It'll require evening classes for your CPA certification, taking on complex clients, and proving you can handle major audits. I'm ready, I said. Whatever it takes. We mapped out a plan that would require me to work harder than I'd ever worked before. But I knew from experience that the investment would pay off. In my previous life, I'd never made it past junior accountant, trapped in entry-level pay for 20 years. This time I was going to build real wealth. But first I had to decide what to do about the pregnancy. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Martinez, who delivered Emma in my previous timeline. You're about 6 weeks along, Dr. Martinez confirmed. Have you told the father? My husband and I recently separated. He doesn't know. Do you plan to tell him? I thought about Daniel's note in my previous life, the one where he'd asked me to sign papers terminating his parental rights. I don't know yet. I'm still deciding whether to continue the pregnancy. Take the time you need. This is your decision, Maya. No one else's. I left with a prescription for prenatal vitamins and 3 weeks to decide. But deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. I wanted this baby. Emma had been the best thing about my previous life, even through all the struggles. But this time I was going to do it right. This time, I'd have the financial stability and career success I'd lacked before. 2 months later, Daniel's lawyer sent divorce papers. The terms were simple. Split everything 50-50, no alimony, clean break. There was a clause about custody if any children existed, but Daniel clearly didn't know about Emma. This was my last chance to tell him. I signed the papers without mentioning the pregnancy. Daniel had made his choice and I was making mine. With my share of the divorce settlement, I bought a small condo in a neighborhood I knew would explode in value. I threw myself into my career with an intensity that shocked my colleagues. I passed my CPA exam on the first try, easy when you've already studied this material 20 years ago, and Sharon promoted me to senior accountant when I was only 26. I'm also looking for a junior partner, Sharon told me. Someone who could eventually take over the firm when I retire. I think that could be you. This conversation had never happened in my previous life. I'd been too busy surviving to thrive. But now I was being offered opportunities I'd never dreamed possible. I'm very interested, I said. But I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant. Due in October. Sharon nodded thoughtfully. And the father? Completely out of the picture. It'll just be me and the baby. Does this change my offer? I asked directly. Not at all. If anything, it makes me respect you more. We'll set you up with flexible scheduling after the baby arrives. I don't believe in forcing women to choose between career and family. Emma was born October 15, 2003, exactly when she'd been born before. But this time everything was different. I had a high-paying career. I had savings and investments that were already growing. I had my parents' support for the first 6 weeks. Most importantly, I had confidence that I could handle single motherhood because I'd already done it once. The second time around, single motherhood was actually easier. I knew what to expect. I knew which baby gear was essential and which was marketing hype. I knew how to maximize sleep and batch-cook meals. I worked from home 3 days a week, went to the office for essential meetings, and somehow managed to maintain my billable hours while raising an infant. By Emma's first birthday, I'd saved more money than I'd had by the time she was 10 in my previous life. I'd also made strategic investments in tech stocks that I knew would boom. Google, Amazon, Apple, companies that would define the next decade. Even modest investments were going to pay off enormously. When Emma was 2, Sharon made me junior partner. I was 28 years old and earning triple what I'd made as a junior accountant. Combined with my investments, I was building wealth at a rate that shocked me every time I checked my accounts. But more than money, I had time. Time to read Emma bedtime stories every night. Time to take her to the park on weekends. Time to be present in her life in ways I'd never been able to before. She was thriving, confident, curious, happy. And it filled me with pride to see how different this childhood was from her first one. The years passed quickly. Emma started school. I continued climbing the ladder at work. We moved to a bigger condo in the neighborhood that had gentrified exactly as I'd known it would, selling my first place for 10 times what I'd paid. I dated occasionally but never seriously. I was building an empire for my daughter, and nothing was going to distract me from that. Then, 7 years after Daniel left, he walked into my office. I looked up from my desk. The corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that I'd earned through sheer determination. And there he was. Older, wearing expensive clothes, looking successful and polished. "Maya," he said. "Thank you for seeing me." "What do you want, Daniel?" I wanted to apologize for how things ended between us. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I realize I handled everything badly. Why now? Why after 7 years of silence? He looked uncomfortable. Lily and I broke up 6 months ago, and being alone has given me time to reflect on my choices. I realize now that leaving you the way I did was cowardly. So that was it. His relationship had failed and he was feeling nostalgic. How predictable. "I appreciate the apology," I said coolly. "But it's in the past. I've moved on. I've heard you have a daughter." My blood ran cold. "Where did you hear that?" "Mike saw you at a school event. He said she looked about 7 years old." Daniel leaned forward. "Maya, I need to ask you something. Is she my daughter?" I could have lied. I could have told him Emma was from a relationship after our divorce. But I knew Daniel. He wouldn't stop until he got answers. And I needed to control this narrative. "Yes," I said. "Emma is your biological daughter. I was pregnant when we separated. I chose not to tell you." "Why? Why wouldn't you tell me I was going to be a father?" "Because you were planning to leave me for your ex-girlfriend. What exactly did you think telling you would have accomplished?" "I had a right to know." "Did you?" I stood up, anger flooding through me. "You abandoned your wife. You moved to Seattle for another woman. You filed for divorce without ever speaking to me directly. What part of that behavior suggested you'd want to know about a baby?" If you'd known, nothing would have changed. You would have chosen Lily anyway. I just saved us both the pretense of you pretending to care." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I want to meet her. I want to be part of her life." "Why?" "Because you're lonely after your breakup. Because she's my daughter. Because I've missed 7 years of her life and I want to be part of her future." I studied him carefully. In my previous life, Daniel had known about Emma from the beginning and had immediately signed away his rights. He'd wanted nothing to do with fatherhood. But in this timeline, with 7 years of distance and a failed relationship behind him, he was making a different choice. "If you want to be part of Emma's life," I said slowly, "we do this on my terms. You prove you're serious first. 3 months of therapy with me to work through our issues. 3 months of demonstrating commitment before you meet her. And if you disappear again, if you hurt her, there won't be a second chance." "Fine. I'll do whatever it takes." We started therapy the following week with Dr. Chan, a family therapist who didn't pull punches. "Daniel, you abandoned your pregnant wife," Dr. Chan said bluntly during our first session. Now you want back into your daughter's life 7 years later. Can you understand why Maya is skeptical? I didn't know she was pregnant. Would it have changed anything if you had? Daniel was quiet. I think you need to be honest about your motivations, Dr. Chan continued. Are you doing this because you genuinely want to be Emma's father? Or are you trying to fill a void that Lily left? Maybe both, Daniel admitted. But does that make it less legitimate? It might make it less stable, which is exactly Maya's concern. Week after week, we worked through the wreckage of our brief marriage. It was painful and exhausting, but I kept thinking about Emma and whether she might benefit from knowing her father. 2 months in, Daniel announced he was moving back from Seattle. I've been thinking about it since I found out about Emma, he said. Seattle was where Lily wanted to be, not me. My daughter is here, and I want to be near her. The commitment in his voice was genuine. He was willing to uproot his entire life to be part of Emma's world. That was more than I'd expected. Are you ready for me to tell Emma about you? I asked. I'm ready if you are. That night I sat Emma down. She was 7 years old now, full of questions and opinions about everything. Emma, I need to talk to you about your father, I said. She looked up from her drawing. What about him? Your daddy didn't know about you when you were born, but recently he found out. And he wants to meet you. Does he want to be my dad now? He says he does. But I wanted to ask you first. Would you want to meet him? Emma thought carefully. Can I ask him why he left you? Of course. Okay. I want to meet him. But I want you there too. 2 weeks later we met Daniel at a park. Emma studied him carefully, noting the resemblances between them. You look like me, she said. We do have the same eyes, Daniel agreed. Are you my dad? Yes, sweetheart. I am. Why did you leave my mom? Daniel glanced at me and I nodded. I made a mistake, he told Emma. I thought I wanted something different. I left your mom to be with someone else. But I didn't know about you. If I had, I like to think I would have made different choices. But you would have left mom anyway, Emma said. Probably yes. Your mom and I weren't right for each other. Are you going to be my dad now? I'd like to try if you'll let me. Over the next months, Daniel worked to build a relationship with Emma. He moved back to town, attended her events, learned her likes and dislikes. Emma gradually warmed to him, starting to call him dad, introducing him to her friends. Watching their relationship develop, I felt complicated emotions. I was glad Emma had a father now, but I was also protective, always watching for signs he might pull away. But Daniel proved consistent. When Emma turned 8, he asked about formal custody arrangements. I want to be more than the fun dad who visits. I want real parenting responsibilities. We worked out a schedule where Emma spent weekends alternating between us. It was what co-parents did, and it seemed to work. Until Emma came home one weekend and told me Daniel had asked if she wanted to live with him full-time. He said I could have my own room and a dog. Rage filled me. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. But Mom, I don't want to leave you. I called Daniel immediately. We need to talk. Now. At the coffee shop I didn't hold back. You asked Emma about living with you full-time without discussing it with me first. That's manipulative. I was just gauging her interest. You're competing with me for her affection. And that's exactly what I was afraid of. I'm trying to be a father. You're trying to make up for lost time by competing with me. For 7 years Emma and I were a team. Now you show up and suddenly that's not enough. She is my daughter, Maya. I have rights. Rights you ignored for 7 years. Emma's not a void filler because your relationship failed. We were attracting attention but I didn't care. 20 years of anger from both timelines was pouring out. You think I'm competing with you? Daniel asked. I'm trying to build a relationship with my daughter. And what happens when being a dad gets boring? Are you going to disappear again? I'm not going to disappear. You already did once. Why should I believe you won't do it again? Daniel stood abruptly. You're always going to see me as the guy who left. Nothing I do will ever be enough for you. You're right. You are that guy. No amount of showing up now changes that you abandoned your pregnant wife. He left and I sat there shaking. Was I being unfair? Or was I right to protect Emma from getting too attached? That night I couldn't sleep. I'd been given a second chance to rewrite my life, but I was making new mistakes instead of avoiding old ones. Was pushing Daniel away, protecting Emma, or hurting her? The next morning I called him. I want to apologize. I said things that weren't fair. I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have asked Emma about living with me without talking to you. I think we need more therapy. Just you and me. I agree. Over months of intensive therapy, Daniel and I learned to co-parent effectively. We established custody schedules, communicated about decisions, showed up together for Emma. Gradually, I learned to trust that he wasn't going to disappear. He proved himself through consistency, showing up even when inconvenient, following through on promises. By the time Emma was 10, we'd settled into functional co-parenting. We weren't friends, but we were partners in raising our daughter. Then Daniel started dating Jennifer Park, a teacher at Emma's school. She was kind and warm and genuinely liked Emma. When Daniel first mentioned her, I told myself I was fine with it. I was happy for him. Except I wasn't fine. Because watching Daniel fall in love with someone else made me realize something I'd been avoiding. I still loved him. Not the man who'd left me, but the man he'd become over 3 years of proving his commitment to Emma. I was in love with Daniel Zhang, and I had no one to blame but myself for pushing him away at every opportunity. The realization hit me one Saturday when Daniel brought Emma home with Jennifer. They were holding hands, laughing, looking like a happy family. And I felt something sharp in my chest that I recognized as jealousy. That night, I cried for the first time since waking up in my 25-year-old body. I'd been so focused on building career success and financial security that I'd forgotten about building a life that included love and partnership. The next morning, I called my therapist for an emergency session. I think I'm in love with my ex-husband, I admitted. And I think I've been in love with him for a while, but I was too angry to admit it. What changed? He's dating someone else. And seeing them together made me realize what I've been missing. So what do you want to do? I don't know. It's too late, isn't it? He's happy with Jennifer. Is it too late? Or are you just scared? I was scared. Terrified, actually. But I was also tired of living in fear. Before I could work up the courage to tell Daniel, he showed up at my office. We need to talk, he said. My heart sank. He was going to tell me they were engaged. What about? I asked. About Jennifer. I ended it. Last week. I stared at him. Why? Because I realized I was using her as a replacement for what I actually wanted. Someone I actually wanted. And it wasn't fair to her. I don't understand. Maya, I'm in love with you. I think I've been in love with you since I came back into Emma's life. But I convinced myself it was impossible, that you'd never forgive me. So I dated Jennifer, but she wasn't you. I couldn't breathe. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I had to tell you how I feel. When did you realize? That day at the coffee shop when we fought about Emma. You were so fierce and protective. And I realized the woman I'd married had become someone strong and incredible. And I'd been an idiot to let you go. You didn't let me go. You ran away. You're right. And I've spent 3 years trying to prove I've changed. But I understand if it's not enough. I looked at him and saw genuine vulnerability. He wasn't making excuses or being defensive. He was just honest. I need to tell you something too, I said. I'm in love with you. And I hate that I am because it feels like betraying everything I promised myself. But watching you be Emma's father, watching you show up consistently, I fell in love with you anyway. His eyes widened. Really? Really? But Daniel, there are no third chances. If you hurt Emma again, if you disappear again, I won't forgive you. I understand. And I'm willing to take this as slowly as you need. We started dating in secret, not telling Emma until we were sure. We went to dinner when she was with friends, talked late at night after she slept, learned each other again. And gradually I let my guard down. I let Daniel back into my heart as the man he'd become, not the man who'd hurt me. I forgave him because holding on to anger was preventing happiness. 6 months later, we told Emma we were dating. I already knew, she said. I saw Dad kiss you. Are you okay with it? I asked. Are you kidding? This is the best thing ever. You can get married and I can have both parents together. Daniel and I looked at each other. We hadn't discussed marriage yet. We're not there yet, sweetheart, I said. We're just dating. But you could get married someday, right? Maybe someday, Daniel said. Except a year later, Daniel proposed. Not with grand gestures but quietly at home with Emma there. Maya-chan, he said, kneeling in our living room. I asked you to marry me once when we barely knew each other. I'd like to ask again now that we're older and wiser, now that we know what we're getting into. Will you marry me? I looked at Emma's hopeful face, then at the ring representing this new chapter. Yes, I said. I'll marry you. 6 months later, we married in a small ceremony. Emma was our flower girl, beaming as she walked down the aisle. When Daniel and I exchanged vows, they weren't generic promises but personal acknowledgments of everything we'd been through. I promised to stay, Daniel said. No matter how hard things get, I promise to stay and work through it with you. I promise to trust you, I said. To not punish you forever for past mistakes, to believe you're the man you've proven yourself to be. As we danced at our reception with Emma between us, I thought about both my lives. In my first timeline, I died alone, never forgiving Daniel, never finding happiness beyond Emma. In this timeline, I'd made different choices that led here. Remarried to the man who'd once left me, with a daughter who finally had both parents together, building a family that was complicated but full of love. 5 years later, Emma was 15 and we had a son named Alex. One night after a particularly difficult argument with teenage Emma about curfew, Daniel and I collapsed on the couch. Do you ever regret giving me another chance? Daniel asked. I thought carefully. There were still moments when old hurt resurfaced, but those were overshadowed by years of him proving his commitment. No, I said. I don't regret it. Do you? Never. You and Emma and Alex, you're my whole world. Years passed. Emma graduated high school and went to college. Alex grew from quiet child to talkative preteen. On our 10th wedding anniversary, Daniel and I returned to the park where Emma had first met him. Do you think about how different things could have been? Daniel asked. All the time, I admitted. I think about the timeline where you left and never came back. Do you think this is the best timeline? I think it's the one we've got, I said. And that's enough. That night, we video called Emma at college and asked how she really felt about our complicated history. Honestly, Emma said, I used to be angry. When I was younger, I felt like I'd missed out by not having you both from the beginning. But as I got older, I realized something. A lot of my friends with parents who stayed together watched them fight constantly or be miserable. But I learned that relationships take work, that mistakes can be forgiven, that people can grow and change. You guys figured it out. You did the work. That's impressive. After we hung up, Daniel and I held each other, both crying with relief and gratitude. We got lucky, Daniel said. It wasn't luck, I said. It was us showing up and doing the work. We earned having a well-adjusted kid. That night, lying next to Daniel, I thought about my impossible journey one more time. I died at 45 in my first life, alone and full of regrets. I'd been given a second chance and chosen a path that was messy and complicated, but ultimately full of love. I didn't know if I'd made all the right choices. There were infinite timelines, infinite ways our story could have unfolded. But this timeline, this messy, imperfect, beautiful timeline, was the one we'd created together through choices and mistakes and forgiveness and growth. When I got pregnant 20 years ago in my first life, Daniel vanished with his first love for 20 years. But in this life, when I chose to delay telling him, I set in motion events that eventually led us back to each other in a healthier, stronger way. I couldn't say which timeline was better, but I could say with certainty that this timeline was mine, built from my choices, shaped by my experiences in both lives, and filled with people I loved who loved me back. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.